Happy Equinox, and welcome to all the people all around the world that not only are joining this Latin America session, but have been with us since the beginning. For some of us, as we are talking, it's already Sunday. For others, started on Friday, but the most important thing, I was talking with Lenny and our audience, this is one of the most fascinating times of the year where we meet together in this global meeting of Equinox. So my name is Inez. I'm calling you from São Paulo, Brazil. It's a joy being the host in this Latin America session, our 7th from 8 events culture zone. But I'm not alone. I'm together with the other hosts and the incredible team that we have, Eliane, Martin, Josefa, Robert, and of course, Lainey Rachel Anderson, the responsible or guilty person for us to be together today again. And we will have 2 amazing speakers in the Latin America session. Folarin, that is calling us from Nigeria. Say hi, Folarin, for the ones that don't know you already. Hello.
Hi.
Happy to have you here. But also Armando, that is going to call us from Mexico. But before we have the opportunity to hear the amazing ideas that these speakers have for this session, I will pass the floor to Lainey Rachel Anderson to talk a little bit with us about our practical infos and good etiquette on Zoom. So yes. The floor is with you, Lainey. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've all spent so much time on Zoom now that the basics everybody knows, but just good etiquette is that when you're not one of the speakers, please mute your microphone. And if you're walking around, some people have walked their dog or done some, picked up food and stuff, turn off your camera. Otherwise you'll end up in the video walking your dog or saying, weird comments during the session when you get really excited. So, and the camera will be on you as well. So please keep the microphone muted. You're most welcome to have the camera on if you're not moving around too much. So that was the practical stuff. On the content side, we are doing something new this time. It used to be the Global Bildung Day. Now we're calling it the Global Meeting on Equinox because Bildung may be a strange word to a lot of people. We're still the Global Bildung Network, but we're meeting on Equinox because the day has the same length around the globe. And we were just, before we turned on the camera and started the meeting, joking about what an amazing time of year it is to meet with people around the globe, and we do need an Equinox cake at some point. So maybe next time, March 21st, we'll figure out what to serve online. This time we've made another change as well. We've written a text called ABCDEFGH, What It Means to Be Human. And that's because not only are we renaming it the Global Meeting on Equinox, we also have a book that came out at the last meeting 6 months ago called What It Means to Be Human, with Bildung texts from around the globe. So Bildung is still in there. So we start with what it means to be human because it's such an important question to discuss in the day and age that we're in. We're connected globally, but we're also facing AI and other things. So we need to figure out who we are as a species. And then we chose the topic for this particular global meeting on Equinox to be cooperation. And the text that Folarin and I wrote addresses some of the things that we do need to take into account as we try to solve the global problems that we've created for ourselves as a species. And A is for artificial intelligence, B for biotech, C for circularity, D for demographic development, E for education, F for finance, G for global dispersion of knowledge, and H for humanism and human rights and humanity. And we're now in the 7th session, and we're going to hear about global dispersion of knowledge from a Folarin with relationship to this document. So it's this sort of a backbone of the whole event. So that's the new thing, and I think this has been a really interesting way of also bringing a different kind of perspective into the whole event. And we also come up with 11 different ways of doing things in this document, and it's online. And if Robert can share the link in the chat, that would be amazing. And then he's also going to share something else in the chat, because we have this little ritual at the global meeting on Equinox, which is that we have a Padlet. And a Padlet, if you click on the link, is a world map. Some of you have been here earlier, so but there are some new people joining. You click on the Padlet link, you get to a global map. And in the bottom right-hand corner, if you're on a computer screen, there's a round mark with a plus sign in it. If you click on that, you can add your address and you will mark where you are on the map. And as you can already tell, we have had people joining from literally around the globe. The plan is to take over with Bildung and meaningful conversations about what it means to be human. Eventually, we will be 8 billion people on Zoom, but maybe not next time, but in a year, maybe. So we hope to create this map showing that we've actually joined this from all over the globe.
But we have more, haven't we, Lene?
Exactly.
The other one.
The other one.
Making a question.
Yes, because we would like to hear how people think about the topic that we're going to address. And so we've come up with a question that we would like you all to not write the answer in the chat, but take a piece of paper or write it somewhere else and write your answer to the following question that Robert is going to share on the screen, which is... Robert needs to be a co-host so he can share stuff on the screen. Somebody forgot to make Robert the co-host. Who could that have been?
Who could that have been? This question of power.
You can't trust people anymore.
We can't trust people anymore. Yeah, it's true.
Or you can't hire proper staff anywhere. So what is stopping us from cooperating better? You got 2 minutes. Please write it on a piece of paper somewhere else than the chat. The reason why we do not want you to write it in the chat to begin with is because if somebody writes something there, then everybody will have an opinion about it and we'll discuss the first thing that came up. We want your fresh thinking before you were influenced by anybody else. And I'll give you 2 minutes. And if you already participated in this in the previous event, you'll just come up with some more good stuff. So what's stopping us from cooperating better? And there we have it, 2 minutes. So please write your answer in the chat and let's see what's stopping us from cooperating better. Ooh, genuine communication across scales. That's a good one.
Mismatch between our evolved human nature and artificial environment and social structures we live in. Whoa. This is going to be a strong board at the end. Okay. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that what we're going to do with all these answers is that Robert is going to make us a sound cloud, a word cloud of all the core ideas that come in, and we'll return to that later. And on that note, I think we can.
Yes, thank you all that have contributed to this board. And now, as we said, we are going to have two special speakers. And sorry for my bad English. I'm not a native English speaker, so please be patient with me. I will do my best in order to be with you. And as Lene said, in the ABCDEFG article that we shared with all of you and is in the chat also, Robert gently shared with all of us, we have the fundamental building blocks about what we need for what it means to be human going upside down. And in this session, we will have Folarin that I will present, and also Armando talking about a specific block on this article, that is the global dispersion of knowledge. So I will very shortly present Folarin, give you 10 minutes for you to talk about how it was writing this article together with Lene, but also about what's this specific block. After this 10 minutes, we will give 10 minutes to Armando to talk again about his perspective. And afterwards, we will have breakout rooms, okay? So Folarin Gbadebo-Smith is director of the general at the Nigerian Institute for Social and Economic Research. He's also trained as a surgeon and has spent a number of years as a politician in Nigeria. Thank you. An enormous honor to have you here today with us. When Folarin is talking with us today about knowledge as an unevenly distributed as money and how much this is not sustainable. You co-authored with Linnea the ABCDEFGH paper, and will speak with us about the thoughts behind it and the need for global access to knowledge. So please, looking forward to hear from you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. By the way, I have recently retired as the Director General for the Institute of Social and Economic Research. I'm retired, but not tired. This has been a strange journey for me. You know, we started, I met Linnea by pure accident at a conference in Wales, and it's been a fascinating journey. Just reading her publications, her books, and her thoughts. You know, I finally came to understand what a futurist does. I thought they were science fiction characters before this. So the question on the table is dispersion of knowledge. This session takes off from my earlier discussion on rethinking education. Some of this, I'm sure Linnea will in time put out videos so that those who missed it can see how this flows. I must start this segment on global dispersion with even more questions than I had in the first session. What is the imperative? I asked myself the question, what is the imperative for global dispersion of knowledge? What is the urgency, and why now? There are some new realities which humanity faces. Globalization is a fairly old one now. In fact, people are talking of reshoring, and we're going back to the days when walls were being thrown up between countries, trade, and so on. But I think those walls are temporary, and the fright that the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic gave us is fast fading. So people are going to go back to their old habits, bad habits, if you ask me, but they'll go back to their old habits anyway. We are faced with climate change, global migration flows, technology advances, and I'm talking about AI. And I was watching a program yesterday when somebody said, I am manipulating my first quantum bits. Now, people may not understand what that means, but between AI and quantum computing, humanity will have to really rethink its role in the cosmos. With these changes come new complexities, which humankind has to respond to. And these responses will not be local. They will not be left in the hands of a few tech giants and all, everybody on Earth will have to participate to some extent or the other. In Africa, we are taking on the free movement of goods and people, so we can realize the goals set by the AfCFTA, that's the Africa Free Trade Zone, and hopefully ignite development. In this new universe, citizens are global, or at least the boundaries and borders that existed before will fast crumble. The knowledge base that these global citizens must have will be different from what exists now. A migrant from Nigeria, Somalia, Iraq, going to Europe will have to carry along with him a certain body of knowledge if he is to survive in those societies. And those societies are traveling at light speed, away from convention, from the old technologies towards the new technologies. The knowledge base will definitely be very different. The world is also getting more complex. Think about the butterfly effect. War in the Middle East drives inflation in Nigeria. You know, the connections are not obvious, but definitely they are there, taking place through various vectors and agents. But first, let me take a stab at knowledge. For the purposes of this discussion, I recognize three knowledge archetypes. Survival knowledge, which is stuff that is community-based and which humans, individuals, communities need to survive. That is farming techniques, known medicine, botany, Ubuntu, etc. Then there's freedom knowledge, stuff that frees the mind, psychology, the arts, morality, ethics, Ubuntu again, and finally, exploratory knowledge. Mark you, these are terms that are peculiar to me. Exploratory knowledge encompasses those skills that encourage inquiry into the unknown. These same skills and attitudes allow us as a species to, in quote, master our environment. I'm talking about mathematics, thought experimentation, logic, critical thinking, and unknown sciences. There are sciences that are coming that currently do not exist. These fields overlap with current culture, and culture is closely woven into the way we learn and where and how knowledge is transmitted and diffused. Transmitting and diffusing each type of knowledge calls for a different approach, but that's a discussion for another day. Then we come to the competition of nations. Trade, the trade not aid argument compels a different infrastructure. The question that was asked at the beginning of this session, which is why are we not cooperating, is reflective of a binary zero-sum type of thinking. Your gain is my loss. And in this world, it is difficult to share knowledge, because knowledge is power, power is money, and money is the end game for the current capitalist system. But we in the coming age, the age of nanotechnology, quantum computing, knowledge is likely to have the currency of its own. And sharing this knowledge will involve moving to a more cooperative arrangement. You can understand supply chains, economic complexity, patents, regulations on trade. It's all about knowledge. Knowledge is now understood, for instance, to be the infrastructure of trade. The particular type of knowledge that will allow Africa's global citizens to participate fully in the BINC economy is unfortunately not widespread, which informs the question of why and how we go about disseminating knowledge. One thing is for sure, and that is that it will not be possible to navigate the new complexities based on rote knowledge or the old systems of learning. Producing advanced goods that will allow Africa to engage with the global economy will mean going to a different model. In the old days, you could go from agriculture to industry, manufacturing, and low-cost manufacturing, and eventually you'd end up where China has ended up. Well, that story is old now. It's not going to happen for Africa. We have missed that train. We are faced with a world where manufacturing is already sort of agreed between China and South America. Basically, the markets will sort that out. You can imagine then that knowledge is dispersion and absorption becomes an existential matter for Africa, indeed the global South. COVID-19 very, very elegantly proved that case. Africa dodged that bullet purely by chance. It was not the goodwill, it was not the power of knowledge. We couldn't develop our own vaccines, and yet we are part of the global travel world. That means that we cannot take a position where some people are ignored, or some peoples are ignored, and some other people enjoy the benefits of knowledge or the knowledge economy. It will come back to bite everybody. So, what is the issue with dispersion? There are headwinds. There are forces that resist new knowledge, new methods of dispersion, new access. The most intense of which are, I think, establishment think. People are just wedded to orthodoxy. They're not willing to move. They've been teaching the same way for over 200, 300 years. And, as far as colonial transmission was concerned, this is the end of knowledge. You have intellectual property rules that favor, maybe in the new economy, just 5 companies. Those companies that control algorithms, those companies that control the internet, the infrastructure of knowledge, everybody will be subject to their wishes. Then you have culture and religion as headwinds. These things, I think these last two shackle the global South probably more than anything else. Most African cultures are not progress prone. If you think of progress prone and progress resistant cultures, the cultures here are not progress prone. There's a reverence for the past, a certain rigidity and tendency towards conformity. Religion, as it's practiced in Africa and most of the global South, only intensifies poverty. If you think about the mental models that allow religions to thrive, you find that religious conditioning discourages critical thinking and seeks to restrain the spirit of inquiry, which is the very thing we are trying to transmit, which is the very thing that will allow, or the very things that will allow Africa to survive. Intellectual property rights by nature exclusionary, for latecomers.
Thank you, Folarin. Thank you for bringing so strongly and passionately this global South, that's opportunity of bringing voice, and how much we need to include other voices in the decision making and knowledge as exploratory. I would like to present now Armando. Armando is reaching us from Mexico. Hi, Armando. Happy to have you here in our session of Latin America. Armando invested the last 20 years of his professional life leading Via Educación, a Mexico CSO that promotes effective education for democratic citizenship. He and his colleagues are convinced that education must help individuals achieve their highest potential, climb up the social ladder, and help them become better citizens. Via Education's motto is unleashing the potential of society to transform itself. The presentation of Armando will explore some of the opportunities and challenges in education in Latin America region, with focus in Mexico, and how to help students to reach their fullest potential. I believe this is totally aligned with what you are bringing to all of us so generously, Folarin. What are the roles of different stakeholders and the exciting opportunities to leapfrog inequality in education through re-signifying cohesion, commitment, and capacities to transform education and systems? So very much looking forward. The floor is with you, Armando, and hope that we have time for the two of you to talk with each other and the audience also. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ines. Thank you very much, Marlene, for your presentation, and thank you also, Len, for the invitation. I'm so excited to be here. I appreciate so much these questions that Len has put into this Equinox session on the Bildung movement. How do we cooperate? How do we rethink our human experience? What it means now? And what it means in society in the future, so everybody can thrive. So I feel like I found my tribe. So I'm very excited to now be part of this conversation too. And Len asked me to share some ideas on the scenario of Latin America in the Mexican context. So I will do some of that, and I will also try to connect with the conversation of Bildung and how these somehow are interrelated. And I also although I'm not coming from the research sort of world. I come from more of a practitioner work. I do some research. Actually, I had a chance to meet Lynn in a research initiative that we have had. So I'm going to talk a little bit on that as well. I will divide this presentation in three different moments. So first, I will share some background on the Latin American region. More specifically, I will put the eyes on the context of the Mexican education sector. And then I will tell you a little bit of my journey and the connection with early connection with Bildung, and how did I sort of approach and I became a fan of the movement, and then some experiences of the last few years from the practitioner side. So as you may know, the context of Latin America is quite complex. So we face an era of tremendous economic inequality and poverty, with the highest levels of inequality in the world, and with some of the highest levels of poverty as well. We have also we are facing political instability and governance throughout the different countries in Latin America due to populism, to extreme right, to extreme now moving to extreme right from extreme left, and with much uncertainty on the future of the political scenario in most of the cases in our region. We also face lots of corruption at different levels in the government, but also in the private and the civil society sector. So the diminishing of the trust and the confidence among the different stakeholders is still there, and it is still a problem, which has led to a new kind of problem, not new, but reinforced problem on violence and organized crime. So we unfortunately see the solution of a little bit still far away, the solution of violence and organized crime due to drug trafficking, to the increase of high crime rates. We also see the degradation of the environmental and the affection of the climate change in different regions, which goes to the extreme drought in some areas and extreme rain in some others, which is now also pushing the economy to a different sort of challenge. We see also the huge challenge with migration and displacement. So many people who are now even climate migrants, and people who are migrating because of violence. So it's also quite of a problem. In terms of just as Folarin has said, in the aspect of health is also a challenge due to the pandemic. We haven't recovered entirely in so many places from our health systems haven't strengthen their capacities to be useful for so many people still, and that of course there's of course another issue on education and the developing on human capital, which is still facing huge inequalities and huge trouble, especially in quality education. And also, well, inclusion in human rights, specifically for indigenous communities, which keep being excluded of the conversation and the decision making, and making so many decisions for them, and which is contrary to their own tradition, and contrary to their own to the knowledge and the capabilities and the benefits that we can learn, and the wisdom that we can learn from these kinds of communities. So as you can see, it's a cocktail of so many different challenges and so many different problematic scenarios, but perhaps not taking only from that perspective, but also taking from the side of the opportunities and for the side of the assets that the Latin American region has in terms of the diverse tradition, very long-lasting traditions with elder people, with the indigenous communities, with the strong family bonds that are still present in so many families throughout the different regions and the different communities across Latin America. A vibrant youth culture, the demographic bonus that we still have in terms of youth, the resilience of the population actually, besides and against all these challenges and opportunities, still the resilience of the community, especially the youth, who are looking for new opportunities for future development, for creativity, for to have a global influence. So although there's so many different issues and so many different challenges, deep challenges, there's still sort of the hope for the future, the hope for building something that people will embrace and be more, not objects of transformation, but subjects of their own transformation. So we tend to feel that we're from the practitioner side, from the civil society organizational side, we feel that we're getting closer to one side of the pendulum, which will be harsh. It will be hard. It's going to be a difficult experience to have, but we are hopeful that we will get the energy, the power that we need, so we can face these opportunities with better capabilities, perhaps. In terms of the education system, just to give you a glance of how big the education challenge is in Mexico, we have more than 261,000 schools across the country. The private education only serves 13% of the population, so the public schools reaches 87%. We have 2 million teachers in Mexico. The teacher-student ratio goes from 1 teacher to serve 20 to 25 students. We have a little more than 36 million students in Mexico in the different levels of education, the different states of education. Only 4 out of those 36 millions, only a little more than 10% goes to higher education. So only 4.5 million students go to higher education. So there has been a huge dialogue and a huge discussion about access and education. Still, the quality of education is something that is still on a quest. In that sense, my own journey with education began a little more than 20 years ago. As Ines said, I have invested my last 20 years of my professional career in developing an organization, a civil society organization we call BIEducación, which is through education, recognizing education as a means for new kinds of opportunities. The mission of the organization is to generate opportunities of social sustainable development through education, and our motto has to do with precisely unleashing the potential of society to transform itself, which actually I something very similar I read in the Nordic Secret books, which I found really interesting. I became a fan right away and wanted actually to know more about it. And last year I had a chance to visit actually Sweden and go to several fall schools and interview some directors and principals of the fall schools and meet with the other author of the book with Thomas Björkman, and try to see exactly what this Bildung notion means and how can a notion of that could be integrated in the Latin American and specifically in the Mexican sort of education tradition and the pathways that we're now seeing and we're now trying to build so more children can thrive in the future because of their education. So we decided to take on education for democratic citizenship because there has been a focus, a lot of attention put into reading and writing and do math, operations. However, the way we assess our education completely puts out of the way other kinds of aspects of human development that are really needed now. not just the social emotional piece, which now after the COVID pandemic has been, we all know about what it means to have mental health. We've seen we look at that in different aspects, and we recognize the importance of it. But there's another bunch of qualities, another bunch of capacities that also have to be developed, not just from school, but also from family, from a community interactions, from community engagement. And it is through that we're seeing that education as a more of a holistic, approach, and not just related to what one could learn from school. So I would like to share some initiatives, and I know
Armando, I would kindly ask you just one more minute in order for us to have opportunity for people to go deeper in the conversation.
Yes, okay, of course,
thank you.
Yeah, so just to give you a glance, we have worked on the initiatives on the renewal of the school culture together with Peter Senge, for instance, on a systems approach on building new relations to school, so people can be more consistent on what a good education could mean. We have worked together with the University of Barcelona on learning communities using dialogue to increase the kinds of cohesion that education needs in order to operate. We also work on different programs related to mentorship, especially with youth. We all know the importance of a mentor. Especially in youth, it's very important for them to build relations with mentors. So we have an initiative also on that. And we also have different initiatives on learning to participate and be more active in the transformation in your own environment. And we have been doing that for the last almost 15 years with really, really interesting programs. Just to give you an example, we trained more than 90% of the teachers on our own state, on middle school teachers. Those students of those teachers became the first and second generation voters who elected the first independent government in the history of the country. So it's not just about sort of concepts, but it's also about the kinds of interactions and the kinds of empowerment that you can build. And I will sum, because I know I need to finish now, but I will sum the importance of this on what we have found, like the importance of these 3 C's. How do we really pay attention in order to transform education systems? And I would say even any kind of system, but complex systems such as education. How do we really work on cohesion, which means the relationships, the linkages, the exchanges of values, exchanges of interest among people, to build commitment, which is the kind of accountability, the kinds of agreeing upon something that is important, and also, do what you're supposed to do in terms of that agreement to really happen. And lastly, to recognize the capacities and build the capacities that we need. So I would say that many of the interactions and many of the projects that we have developed for the Mexican and now for the Latin American region, they sort of have this as a DNA. And I would try to sort of relate that into the Bildung experience for the Nordic countries in the past and now in the future, because I truly see there's many similarities that we can sort of rely on and to continue learning from. So thank you. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be part of this movement now, and I'm super excited to hear your questions and comments.
Thank you, Armando. And we are excited for having you here also, and showing that Bildung is all over the place in different ways of learning, education, but how much Bildung is happening also in Latin America in another perspective. So we are living the value of cooperation today in this Latin America session. But now I believe that Lene has already placed breakout room, amazing
best breakout rooms ever, because you're going to be in them. And we have 3 guiding questions that we just suggest that you consider. What did we just hear? What did we learn? And what would be a good question to ask the speakers when you come back from the breakout room? And I have given you 20 minutes for this. And as I said, these are the best breakout rooms ever, because you're in them. I just need to not give you 120 minutes, just 20 minutes. And have fun.
Thank you, Armando and Folarin. It was so difficult to cut your words. This is the most difficult part of the event for me.
Inez, you lured me into talking about how I met Linnea and so on, and then you stole my time.
No, but
now it's her fault.
It's my fault because I said, please, I was in the chat with Linnea. I said, oh my God, it's so interesting, but I need to stop. Yes, Linnea, yes. And I said, okay.
Hey, I'm to blame, okay?
Yeah, no one to blame, because this is, I believe that this, and even if we cannot talk everything, Folarin, I believe that the interest and the number of people that we have here, and you mentioning the Global South, if you could, now that people come back, talk a little bit more about what is going on in now in Brazil, next year in South Africa, the G20 going together, and the opportunity of we bringing another type of governance in the world, because knowledge is about making decisions. I don't know, but this was something I was really at the top of my tongue to ask. What about this new way of governance that we can touch now?
Yes.
But the time, it's cruel. But I'm going to start saying this. I am the guilty one. I stopped following and Armando. But now please make lots of questions, because this is so important. Our knowledge is power, and how much when we talk about open source, but at the same time, no one wants to share knowledge.
So one of the really interesting suggestions about intellectual property right, because I'm one of the people actually make a living from having intellectual property right. What we could do, and I think it may actually have been Thomas Björkman who came up with the idea, is that you get 5 years of intellectual property right that's guaranteed. 5 years where you don't have it, but the government gets the royalty for actually protecting your copyright. And then after that, you can decide whether you want to pay a fee for keeping it. So that, I mean, I'm ambivalent about Disney, because they have appropriated so much indigenous culture from around the globe. On the other hand, I would feel bad if Mickey Mouse and some of their really beloved characters like Donald Duck could just be used by anybody for anything, for commercial purposes or political purposes. So I think there is some, and there's the droit moral, where you can't use a piece of art for something that is completely against the values of the artist. I mean, but it's really hard to, if you don't have that intellectual property right to actually protect not just brands, but cultural products. And then there is the time and effort that went into creating something like a patented medication or something like that. Because if you spend, I don't know how many billion US dollars coming up with a cancer vaccine, and you can't make money on it beyond 5 years, there's a lot of research and development that's probably not going to happen. So some kind of in between solution where there's still property rights, but where it's actually, if it's worth keeping, it's also worth paying for.
I agree. I don't think that IP should be done away with, or patents, because as you said, there's time and effort, and it must be rewarded. But I think the system has to be rethought. For instance, there's no reason that you cannot have differential pricing on intellectual property. For the person in the US should not be paying the same thing as the person in Papua New Guinea for access to that right. So there should be a gradient on the curve. And in any case, his potential to realize the benefits of that right can also be curbed if it is determined, for instance, that, and I think it was mentioned in this program that, in this webinar, that there's the possibility of taxing a certain market share.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, LatinAmerica.
Differentially. That attention needs to be paid to such detail. You know, so if the person from Papua New Guinea somehow figures out how to make a fortune from something that Linné developed and designed, then he should be made to pay for everything backwards, you know, retroactively, that he got for free. Otherwise, people are going to start hiding behind third world countries, the global south, to gain cheap access to intellectual property rights. Yes.
Right.
You know, I also worry that some companies in this unfettered competition are trying to patent and force people away from what nature has given. You know, GMO seeds, things like that. You know, there's so much going on that I think that a new body has got to start looking seriously at controlling what people do in this new economy.
Yes.
And
I mean,
maybe
definitely there should be a distinction between a discovery and an invention, because you shouldn't be able
That's
to
interesting.
patent a discovery, because that should belong to all of us. But if you create something from it that wasn't there before, then it becomes an invention, and you can patent the invention. But if you find something in the, you know, a new herb in the forest, and you realize it can cure cancer, you shouldn't be able to patent that. But what you do with it could be, you know, intellectual property. But
or you could be given a one-time fee for that discovery, or whatever that one-time fee is.
Right, for bringing in new knowledge that everybody wants to use.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
And by the way, otherwise people that have the wisdom in nature and in their territories, they are not going to share, because if they are going to be outside this how could I say, if sharing this with humanity or other people, it's not worthy. At the same time, we can reinforce people staying in bubbles. So what would be the way in the middle, where people that discover say it's good to share what I discover, and also people that are spreading the word and putting something in invention could always profit. Otherwise, it's like the pharma industry. They go to someone discovers an herb, then synthesizes it and turns into a vaccine. But what about the person that shared the ancient knowledge that was there? And again, when we see decolonization, I don't know your thoughts about this, Folarin and Armando. Part of what is being discussed, I believe it's about this, almost recognizing the wisdom that comes from all the parts of the world. Armando is saying yes. Please join us.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's yeah. So I had a chance, a really interesting chance this week to hang out with a Nobel laureate, peace Nobel laureate here in Monterrey, because we have sort of a summit on peace, and we had 7 different laureates, peace laureates, and he was saying something really interesting. He was he was saying how the mindset of in his perspective was that he said all the kids in India are my kids, but when I come to Mexico, all the kids of Mexico are also my kids. And I wonder how this sort of mental models, very easy one, not very complex things, but how those could sort of help reshape some of the paradigms we have to operate in so many institutions, and so many institutions, not just formal institutions, but the institution of the family, institution of the community, institution of the neighborhood. That's why the neighborhood, I loved the concept, and there's so many different things to share on that, on what we have seen, and we have and the potential for development, and which I couldn't have the chance to talk about, but I will continue the conversation with you, Lynn, and you, well, whoever wants to be in that conversation. But what I see is that there's this urgent need of very simple narratives, of very simple mental models that could lead to change very easily without having to convince a lot. But you know what I'm saying? We don't have to force anybody. The urgent issues are right in front of our eyes. But perhaps the thing is, how do we, from local to sort of bottom up, how do we sort of make those arguments strong enough to the people who are capable of starting, you know, living with those he was this guy also this guy on the summit was saying he was really worried about the oversimplification on so many things. So it was sort of a bit of a contrast. Do we have to simplify narratives, but we have to make sure that they are not simple and enough to allow ambiguity, and to allow you know false sense of belonging, false sense of responsibility about things. So the ambiguity and lack of commitment is there, and is you know, is to make us a little bit worried about. I don't know, just
this come back to the mentorship and the need of proper education and quality education for the biggest amount of people. That in the ABCDF, in the article, let's call it like that, in the article, is so strongly in this point of global dispersion of knowledge. For me, it's so touching, because until we have such a few number of people that have the opportunity to have quality education, the ambiguity or the decision making based on fake news or whatever, it's enormous.
Yeah.
I was just about to say the global dispersion of nonsense.
The nonsense,
Because,
that would be great.
I mean, there's like
the
such
11
strong forces just, you know, out there with the, you know, the nonsense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And here in Brazil, we are living an election year. The number of nonsense that is every day in news.
Campaigns, yeah.
Amazonia is burning and people are talking about nonsense. It's like, I'm with my voice like this because the air is unbearable, and people are talking about this and that. What's missing? This is really simple. Sorry.
I think also we need to pay a bit more attention to financing the rest, the global South, financing the upgrade, and it can't be left to the global North. There are too many interests, political, and they are stuck in a mode, in a competitive mode. And this is why the world is constantly in a state of war. I think you know, imagine if, what's the name? I forget his name. Berners-Lee had patented the internet and said, for instance, because easily he would have become instantly the wealthiest man in the world. Everybody is on the internet. But he made it free. So everybody had access to it. What if there was a middle road where he patented it and said all that money goes to uniform development across the world?
That's the kind of middle road that I would like to have. Thank you.
Yes. In other words, it's not just that money does not go to the north or the developed world. It is a development fund that is controlled by people of genuine goodwill. There is no politics. There is no, you know, we just want the people in Mexico, the people in South Africa, the people in Madagascar to have access to money, but not the money, not their politicians. Because there's this handshake between the aid agencies and the political class, you know, mediated by corruption, where all this aid money is just lost.
So I have a different suggestion, which is that we should start buying stuff that has taken time to produce. And say we will buy 1 million such things. You figure out how to produce them and get organized, because you can, if it's money for nothing, it can disappear. But if people start producing stuff and spending time on it, they want their payment. So it's harder to for the money to end up in the wrong pockets. And you would have that economic infrastructure created for, and just also the physical infrastructure, because there would be a need for roads and there would be a need for production capacity, and you would educate people so that they could produce it. And this can be ketchup, it can be shoes, it can be in some instances we might buy things we know we're never going to actually use, because the capacity is not for producing it in a quality that can compete with what we already have, but it has to start somewhere.
Well, some people would push back and say, you know, you don't want to produce goods that nobody wants to buy. You know, the market boosters would show up and start arguing market forces that you can't pick winners. I'm talking about things like education and health and
yeah, we could educate people.
Yeah.
I mean, there will always be a demand for doctors.
Yes. Yes. But even the demand for doctors, you know, the US, Canada, and the UK have raided the Nigerian medical system to the point where, you know, this year alone, 260 doctors from Nigeria have moved to the UK.
Yep.
This is like 1/10 of the annual output. And the Nigerian government does not see fit to have a negotiation with the UK and say, you know what, we can't be producing doctors and you harvest them.
Right. Yeah. All right, welcome back from the breakout rooms.
Welcome back. So we are totally looking forward for the exciting questions you have for our two speakers, Folarin and Armando. We have been chit-chat here and changing the world, but we need you. So please, if you can include in the chat the questions you would like to bring to our speakers. Don't be shy. Or if you feel more comfortable, raise your hand and ask us directly.
Can I just tell you that I was in a group with Mojisola and Temitayo, and they both had some very interesting things to say. So maybe I will hand to them to ask their questions to Folarin.
Thank you, Josefa, for encouraging your partners. Go ahead. What are the interesting questions, please?
Good evening, everyone. I was just, Dr. Smith's presentation made me think about whether it would not be important, alongside everything else that we do, to acknowledge the existence of different learning systems within different cultures. So he made a strong point that the religion and traditions hobble knowledge in Africa. It doesn't allow them, it doesn't make for progress, basically, just to paraphrase his words. But there are different learning systems. If some cultures prioritize, say, metaphysics and the spiritual kind of learning, and they have their own codifications that not necessarily mainstream, should we therefore disregard that system of learning just because it doesn't align with the mainstream or because we don't understand it?
Thank you. Interesting. Folarin?
That is a difficult question to answer. We're talking about the type of learning that leads to an impact on development, because here we are poor, wretched, and misaligned. It is possible that there are different learning systems, but one thing is clear. The learning that you need to survive the afterlife is a bit different from the learning you need to get along in this one. And I'm talking about this immediate existential situation. How are we going to move children to the point where, when they are adults or young adults, they can make rational, logical decisions that will enable their welfare and their economics, whatever that economics is at the time, whether it's the cooperative economy or the green economy, whatever. Those people must be able to cope. And right now, they are being taught the wrong things. That's my argument. Yeah.
I would actually like to comment on that, because this is where a polymodern education structure, or could be useful, because this is the traditional or indigenous knowledge that gives one kind of answers, that solves one kind of problems, which is a spiritual connection to landscape and other people, and existential questions about your personal values and cultural values. Then there's the modern knowledge that you need in order to be able to provide for yourself in the 21st century, or even in the 20th and 19th century. And there are two different kinds, or three different kinds of knowledge, actually, and we need all of them. And the thing about the modern education, the science and the critical thinking and the questioning everything, is that if you are not capable of doing that, you're going to end up at the bottom of the economy, and your life is going to be miserable in this world. But that doesn't mean you can't learn the other stuff as well. It's just that it's going to produce two very different kinds of outcomes. And if you only had the modern science and the critical thinking, and none of the indigenous culture and none of the traditional culture, you become this one-dimensional person who has a really hard time connecting with people in an emotionally deep way, because you don't have a language of poetry. and of spirituality. And but it's for two different parts of life, and you're going to be miserable in one of them if you don't have the knowledge that comes with it.
There's another question here, Lene, and thank you for your comments that is connected to what you are saying. How will the global knowledge community embrace the different cultures and having different learning systems and trajectories? It will be so much confusion. Who would like to comment on Armando, Folarin, or Lene, please?
So there's probably I mean, if you go into education setting some kind of goal and saying we want everybody to reach this level, or we want everybody to learn these things in the same way, you are going to fail because people are different. If you start with the students and say, wonder who those 25 or 30 kids in the classroom are, and how can I give the most meaningful knowledge to all the kids, hopefully, but to as many of them as possible at as high a level as possible. It's a different way of entering the educational situation. And whether that is math or playing an instrument or discussing philosophy or I don't know, any kind of topic or really any kind of method. It's going to be a completely different result for the individual student and also for the group as a whole. And one of the things that we've done in Denmark is that we've changed education from focusing on what can we give the individual student and who are they and what do they need, to saying we want everybody to reach this level or to end up here. And we've seen, I mean, the kids are miserable. And one of the hypotheses is that instead of giving kids something that is meaningful to the teacher and meaningful to the kids so that it's meaningful to engage with the knowledge, somebody has actually said they don't need to read an entire novel if they can just read the 2 chapters that will get them through the test, which means that if that is this is just literature as an example, it means that you're never going to gain any kind of meaning out of that novel. You're just going to be able to come up with the right answers. And if we take that and apply to the rest of whatever it is that you're supposed to learn in school, everything is just going to be meaningless. It's just going to be, can I pass the test or not? And then you actually don't learn anything. So I would say, depending on what the entry point into the education is, there are many different kinds of topics, of content that and also I would say ways of teaching it, methods. It can be very hands-on, it can be very theoretical, it can be a lot of reading, it can be a lot of doing. But the question is, do you start with the result or do you start with the learner?
Thank you, Lene. Folarin, I see that you open your mic. Maybe you have some comments, and afterwards, Oka asked also time for a comment here.
No, I wasn't saying anything in particular. I'm looking for Oka's.
So then Oka, would you like to make Oka make a comment? Oka, please, would you like to make a comment, please?
Yes, I would indeed. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. When we talk about the North-South divide in the inequalities that are so obvious in knowledge production and therefore antithetical to the theme of cooperation we're discussing now, there tends to be, it seems to me, we tend to then think maybe the knowledge is produced in Africa, say, of a more mystical, spiritual kind, and therefore not something you could subject to the formal curriculum. That's not what the evidence shows. If you took something that is basically scientific, like population studies, you can see the imposition not of science, but of Northern ideology on the formulation of population policies in sub-Saharan Africa. This is immensely clear. So what you really have is not the influence of knowledge, but the power of politics. You have the use of punitive levers in some very strong metropolitan institutions that guide governments, not even academics, not researchers, not scientists, that guide bureaucrats into adopting policies that will eventually feed into the learning process in schools and will affect lives. And yet, the knowledge about what to do about something as basic as human reproductivity is not endogenous, does not come from the people themselves. This is what gives rise to what I've published and described as a psychic fracture, a situation where the state believes has some reality of its own, and the people in the communities, they are just amazed that the government doesn't get it. And so we need to look at the area of policy for proof that there are asymmetries. There are very profound inequalities in the way knowledge is not only produced in the world, but distributed and circulated. And when it is resisted, and I mean, disagreement should be a part of the knowledge production and assimilation process, but when it is resisted, there are punitive levers that are applied. Some aid doesn't get there. So the discourse is not robust. So what I'm trying to say is basically two things. That it's not entirely correct to just think that when we talk about the production of knowledge and the asymmetries, then in some cultures, then we're talking about metaphysics and things like that. I'm talking about demography here and policy formulation. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Oka, for bringing this point so strongly. And any comment from the speakers of the panel about what Oka brought us?
I think it's important to define the boundaries of what we're talking about. Oka's point is very well made, but somehow I'm not sure that the options are state or people-driven or people-originated knowledge. There has to be a dialogue so the people can understand what their reproductive rights imply, and government can make policy based on what is a known impact. The Chinese got it wrong with their one-child policy. So should it be 2 children? At the same time, you can't have poor farmers having 8 children, for instance. The very process of decision-making is where I think we should be emphatic. Not so much what the person absorbs or what is distributed, as much as the ability to analyze and review the information given in light of his present and future circumstances. All those 8 children end up in slums in urban centers, and back to the old question of why do people want to go to the cities? Yeah, so that's part of my comment.
Thank you, Folarin. We have a question from Juliana. How can you survive in a society where knowledge is not evaluated and its true measure and it's rather mocked. Would like to answer this one? Maybe Armando, I believe you are making some comments here.
Yeah, I totally agree with Juliana. We have focused so much on one kind of education and one type of education that allows one system to prevail, and we're forgetting that education is much more than that, and it's about making people thrive. It's about reaching their highest potential. It's about being connected as citizens to other people, to respect, to be tolerant, to be able to communicate, be able to synthesize. It's able so much things, and so this agenda on education, even on it's incomplete, because if we still evaluating something incomplete, then our education fails to produce what is supposed to be producing. So, and what I see, and also evaluation, at least from my experience in Latin American countries, then becomes politicized, and then the teachers feel threatened because of evaluation, and then it's a matter of budget, and then it's a matter of discussions, and then who is the most damaged in all this situation is precisely the students and the communities. So what I've seen is sort of this notion of local, this notion of local, on approaching, on being very close to students, on even independent evaluation. So for instance, there's really good experiences here in Mexico on community independent evaluations, very simple evaluation, but are more holistic and more completely on what also somehow related to performance on school, on the different subjects that are needed, to also thrive in the mainstream sort of work, but also on some other things that are also important for the community, for the families, etc. So yeah, it's really quite it's quite complicated, but I see solutions from bottom up on that, not just coming from top down approaches, even international agendas on education and evaluation assessment.
Thank you, Armando. We have lots of comments here in the chat from Linnea and Owen, lots of people talking about the importance of traditional teaching and cultivating epiphanies, the importance of the inputs and outputs of teachers. Linnea, would you like to go a bit deeper on this, about the responsibility of the teachers and how much they are allowed, if I may say so, to bring something about this? Thank you.
I mean, the more you test any kind of students, the more the teaching is going to be teaching to the test, rather than figuring out how can I teach the most to these students, and also and make it meaningful to them. And you never know what each student can learn until you meet them. So being a teacher is and I think a lot of people see the teacher's role as just the transfer of knowledge. It's like, so I know how to do math, now all my students need to be able to do math in the same way and at the same pace and reach the same level. And for some students that's just not the case, and it's the victory if they can do multiplication and you'll be happy about that, and then you have another student who's like, boom, quantum physics by the third grade. And we need to be open to that kind of diversity of mind and talent and interest, and we've not built our educational systems around that. And then we get to but isn't there something that everybody needs to know before they leave the school system, and before we can say you're qualified to get to the next level? And yes, there is, and we need to discuss what those things are. And you need to be able to walk around in traffic without getting hurt, for instance, and you need to know, understand electricity and not put a fork in the socket. I mean, there are things that we need to know to be safe around ourselves. Oddly enough, that's very rarely what we learn in school. But the real process, I would actually like to ask you a question, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but just reflect for 10 seconds. Who was the best teacher you ever had? And why was he or she the best teacher? And I'm not going to do a tour around the screen, but usually when I do this in a workshop, 20% say it was somebody who really showed me this thing that I never heard about before, like butterflies or silent movies or something, and it opened a world to me that I didn't know existed. The other 8 out of 10 say it was a teacher who saw me. He or she understood me. And so that personal relation did that suddenly I flourished, I was interested in education, I was understood, I got what I needed, and I really loved that teacher. And nobody says, well, except I've had cases where people said I had this teacher who was really strict and forced us to learn French or something like that. But it's rarely about the amount of knowledge that has been transferred. It's about the personal relationship. So education has this completely different dimension, and that does not appear in the discussion about how do we create good educational systems. But that is, we've all sat there in similar classrooms with a teacher that everybody was looking at, and the teacher was talking on us. And then we walked out of there not remembering what was said. And the teacher that we remember was the teacher who saw us. Global experience. That is part of what it means to be human. And teachers tend to know this.
And we have a point here from Owen that is saying maybe not all the input thought. Teachers need not be the only input of knowledge. We need teacher students and students teachers. Who would like to comment on this, please? Armando, Folarin, Lene.
Microphone. Folarin.
Folarin, microphone.
Sorry. I agree, especially in the world that is coming. The teacher, as we know it today, may well be an anachronism. Information, finding, meaning, all this will be done by machines. And, I'm already, as an individual, I'm already beginning to rely on the AI on my laptop, in spite of myself. When I think about something, I go there and say, what does the AI think about this? And I'm surprised about how close to my thinking the AI has come. So it's going to be more a peer-to-peer type learning than the old classroom format. We will experience dispersion of knowledge very differently from what we know today. So I think we have to be a bit circumspect about the models we throw up and discuss. Yeah.
Owen, you raised your hand. We are curious, please.
Yeah, just very quickly, I wanted to add just that to connect it back to knowledge, we can view this future education as decentralized, and knowledge as decentralized. And, if we're looking at the level of teacher and student, dissolving that polarity is one way in which knowledge can be distributed in a decentralized manner.
Thank you.
I would like to share a horror story from the current educational scene. was somebody who, it's not called a tweet anymore, I guess, but it was somebody who wrote about it on X. A teacher who said it's become impossible to teach kids anything because they go on, and she was a biology teacher, they go online and ask ChatGPT for an answer, and then ChatGPT gives them the wrong answer, or I get 25 wrong answers when my students go online and ask an artificial intelligence. But that's not the biggest, I mean, that's one problem, but the real problem is that when I then use my knowledge as a biology teacher to point out the mistakes, they say, but who are you to disagree with the artificial intelligence? So we need the teachers as the expert sort of safeguarding of facts and knowledge. And we were talking about the dispersion of nonsense in while you were in the breakout session, because there's so much nonsense out there, and ChatGPT delivers a lot of it. And you have to be, I mean, try asking ChatGPT who you are. I mean, yourself. You'll meet a fascinating story about things you've never done. So it's just a statistical model for what is most likely to be true, and most people are not statistical models who comply with what is the most likely way of living their life. So ChatGPT gets them wrong.
Owen, 1 minute more.
Yeah, so I totally agree that some sort of, stewardship of knowledge and what is sort of objectively right, or whatever, however we want to label that, is important. But Zach Stein has an interesting term, teacherly authority, and it's what you just described kind of, but it doesn't need to be always the same person in the classroom. It can shift to different people for different specialities or interests or whatever. So it can be dynamic in that way.
And thank you, Owen, because you're giving the spoiler for the next session that is almost coming around, the North America one that is going to be have Zach as a speaker. But Folarin, I can see that you open your mic. Any comment about this, please?
Just a last comment. We have to be careful that we do not take ChatGPT as AI. ChatGPT is 4.0 now. You know, all these problems may not exist with ChatGPT 8.0 or Gemini 3.0. You know, these systems are evolving, and you know, when we discuss policy, for instance, we should leave the end open and ensure that we do not confine our thinking to what exists today. It's, you know, thank you.
Thank you, Folarin. And Oka, you raised your hand, please.
Yes, thank you once again. In all this, I was just going back and forth in my mind about the main subject, which is what does it mean to be human? And I kept thinking that, you know, to be human is to be humane. Okay. If to be human is to be humane, then some of the most unavoidable experiences in human life should be captured in the educational process. I sometimes think there is an inordinate emphasis, on competition within the school system. Somebody has to come first. Somebody has to take the prize. Somebody has to repeat the class. And there are no procedures, no referral systems for the mental health issues that may affect both the student who comes first and the one who comes last. And we specialize in making students feel their brilliance and intelligence are determined by their ability to answer questions. And I think that once you answer a question, you close the door on exploration. We need to have a device where, in this new formulation we are thinking about, that the school system teaches students how to ask questions. And the ability to ask the proper questions should be rewarded. They shouldn't always be required to answer them. And we need to make provision for destigmatizing failure. First of all, it's an entrepreneurial requirement, a scientific one, that the wholly grounded and educated student is no longer afraid of failing, but can embrace it as an inescapable fact of life. We don't even have an algorithm in the educational system, for instance, for simulating failure so that, you know, young persons can be taught how to handle it when it does occur. Some people, some students we have in our classrooms today will fail in marriage. They will fail in business. They will fail in politics. They will disappoint themselves. And yet there's nowhere, anywhere in society, in the world, no sector where we can confront this very basic fact of life. So I'm hoping that in developing new systems, I don't think it's utopian at all. I simply think it's necessary. We should factor, so the teacher, I remember, the most empathetic, who to teach without being a teacher. That one is the one I remember. So this is just what I thought I should say. Teach them to ask questions. That's where the critical faculties get excited. Teaching them how to answer questions, I don't see why it's useful, but that's not all there is to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Woka. And this totally connects with what Armando included in the chat, saying how much it was interesting to see the Indian teachers as someone that supports students in order to flourish and thrive. And unfortunately, we need to close this session. We have 15 minutes to the last and final session of this global meeting on Equinox. And thank you, Folarin. Thank you, Armando. Thank you, Lenny, and all the participants in this session. But we could not end before seeing the word cloud with the results of this group. Ooh, Lenny, would you like to comment? Influencers.
That's a new one. Genuine communication across scales and fear. Zero-sum games. Without agreeing to ideas that contradict ours, cooperation will remain an illusion. Excellent, thank you. So, we will meet in 15 minutes in North America, and we got the 3 speakers. We got Zach Stein, we got Steve Jordans, and we got Douglas Rushkoff. It's quite the trio, I promise.
Oh, whoa.
And we will meet you there in 15 minutes, and we will close down the Zoom room in the meantime. I think we've shared all the links that we need to share in this session, and we'll send them after the session. We got your emails. We know where to find you. So see you in 15 minutes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ines. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Also Armando and Folarin, and see you in 15 minutes in North America.
See you. Stay tuned in 15. See you all. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you.